Hey, MV family, thank you for taking the time to watch today's celebration. Whether you're watching it on a Sunday and we are your church, or maybe I'm your Monday morning pastor, I don't know, but I just want to say thank you. It is such a blessing to me that you take time out of your week to listen to what God has to say to you today. I want to say thank you to all those who give to our church and make everything that we have here possible. Your generosity is impacting the kingdom, and I'd like to say thank you. So glad you guys are here today. It is an important time for our church. Obviously, it's a new year, so it's important for everybody as we kind of stand in this time of transition. And that's what we've been talking about last week, and we'll talk about it in the next several weeks, looking at the children of Israel as they too were in a time of transition. And every time you enter into a new year, you are appreciating the past, but you're also anticipating the future. And it's an important time for us as a church because every February, we get together as a body and we celebrate God's goodness, but we also consecrate ourselves expecting for miracles to take place. And we do that by our miracle month. You say, what is that? We start the beginning of every February with a time of 21 days of prayer and fasting. So that means it'll start on Sunday, February the 2nd, and we'll conclude on Miracle Sunday, February 23rd. And we ask that everybody that calls Mountain View their home participate in some sort of fast. Obviously, there are several different types of fast. You could do a specific fast, like maybe you're going to fast from sugar or social media or watching television, something like that. Or maybe you're going to do a certain type of food fast, like you're going to say, I'm going to abstain from eating lunch, or traditional Jewish fast where it's sun up till sundown, like I'm going to eat early breakfast or a late dinner. It may be something like a Daniel fast or something even, along those lines. Whatever it is, we just ask that all those who call Mountain View their home do something. Everybody can do something because there's something in Scripture for everybody to do. But also on Miracle Sunday, we get together and we sow a seed into the future of our church. Your seats were someone's seeds. The balcony was someone's seeds. This building that you're in was someone's seeds. So what we are doing this year is we are giving towards a tangible thing. We have the loan for our building, but as you've heard me say, we don't have the loan for all the FFE, the furniture, the fixture, and some of the extra expenditures that come along with that. So what we are doing is getting together. We're going to sow a seed into the completion of this ministry, also into remodeling and some of the subsequent projects that we have that will take place once we enter into that new building. Now, we have been living on faith. That's who we are as a house. That's who we are as a body. So I need to tell you that we have already taken steps of faith to put down payments on things like a playground and things like a baptismal and some of the other furniture. We don't have the money right now, but we took a step of faith believing that it will come as we have done throughout the year. But one of the unique things about this year is we're actually giving you the opportunity to put your name in cement. Well, maybe not cement, but in a paver, where there is a sidewalk going in that you have the opportunity to put a paver in honor of or in memory of someone. There are 3 different sizes to that, and we encourage you. You can find all about it on the website. If you own a business, we encourage you that put your business name on it. Put 1 brick or 2 bricks or 100 bricks. You can put your name on it for tax deduction. I really don't care, as long as you help us sow a seed into the future. So we encourage you between now and February the 23rd to be praying about that. If you can give towards bricks now, that will be awesome. If you can give towards your miracle gift today, that would be absolutely awesome. It will help me sleep just a little bit better. Come on. You do know that life is all about choices. We made a lot of choices this morning. What time we would get up, what we would eat for breakfast, or would we eat breakfast? What would we wear? What email are we going to answer first in the morning? What social media post or which of our friends' posts are we going to like first? Tomorrow we'll ask what route are we going to take to work? What notes should we take in the morning? What project will our team prioritize first? And then we'll ask questions like, what route are we going to take home? And whether these choices or these decisions are trivial or they're consequential, we make a lot of decisions in a day. Some of the best sources that are out there estimate
that we make about 35,000 decisions every single day. Kids make about 3,000 decisions a day. But if you live till the age of 80, which they're trending, women will live that time. A lifespan for men is about 77, women about 80. That's over 1 billion decisions in a lifetime. Now, there are some of you in this room where that's a level of control for you. And that level of control is actually freeing to you. However, no matter who you are, you can also admit it can be incredibly taxing making that many decisions. Constantly making decisions leaves you feeling depleted, a little bit brain foggy and irritable. So much so that by the time you get home to need to figure out what's for dinner, you don't want to have to make that decision. Or by the time you get to a Friday night and it's supposed to be date night and you're supposed to figure out what you want to wear, you're so frustrated because you don't have the emotional equity or energy to make another decision. It's become such a phenomenon that scholars have actually coined a name, a term for this, a clinical term called decision fatigue. Their theory is the more decisions that you make, whether they be small or big, the more mentally drained you become, which means you now procrastinate decisions, you make hasty decisions, or you overanalyze decisions. Therefore, you end up making poor decisions. And even though we know that certain decisions make a larger impact upon other people than others, the theory says this: we only have so much brain power or mental energy for decision making. And again, every decision you make depletes you of the energy and the mental resources to make the best choice. And I'll say it again, doesn't matter if it's a big choice or a small choice. Each decision is depleting your mental energy the same. Now, that's a lot to say this. I think we all know that. The tension now becomes, we also know some of those decisions that we make not only affect our life, but they affect our family, our business, our employers, our employees, everyone around us. I tell you all that to bring you to Numbers chapter 13, where the nation of Israel is on the edge of the promised land. They are literally a 10 days walk from the land that God had promised their ancestors some 500 years earlier. They were at a time of transition from being slaves to become settlers in this new nation, thus fulfilling their destiny as children of God. And when you look back upon their history, it is no doubt that God had brought them to this moment. He had delivered them from 400 years of Egyptian oppression by sending the 10 plagues and forcing Pharaoh to acknowledge the sovereignty of God. They had witnessed him part the Red Sea and then close it upon the chariots of Egypt. They had seen him provide water when they were thirsty, manna when they were hungry, and quail when they were grumpy. God had led them with a cloud by day and fire by night. They had heard his voice in the midst of thunder, and they saw his glory on Mount Sinai. They even had a tangible representation in the form of the 10 Commandments, which God with his own finger had carved out. So with an overwhelming sense of God's power behind them, they now have a decision to make. Will we move forward in faith or stay stuck here in fear? And it is in this time of transition, they are faced with the crisis of belief. And in Numbers chapter 13 and 14, there are two pivotal chapters in the history of God's people, Israel. And they provide us too, modern believers, with a profound illustration of the consequences of unbelief. In so much that in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, Paul warns the Corinthian church to consider the unfaithfulness of the wilderness generation by exhorting them with this: these things happened as examples, and they were written for our instruction. Now, to change the trajectory of this message and to get us all thinking the same way, I need to tell you this. God has given each of us a destiny. Even if you cannot see it just yet, I need you to believe it. God made you for a reason. You are not an accident. You've been uniquely made on purpose for a purpose. I tell you that because you also need to know the bigger the destiny, the bigger the enemy. And it is in this time of transition between where we are today and where God wants us to be tomorrow that we will always face a challenge. Opportunities will always be accompanied by opposition. But, and this is important, the biggest enemy that you will ever face is you. Our enemy is not the Canaanites, the Amalekites, Cellulite, or the Ammonites. Just seeing if anybody's paying attention. The real enemy is in me. The real enemy is me. And if you don't know this, you will spend your entire life fighting the wrong enemy. Now let me set the scene for you. Again, Israel is positioned to enter the promised land that God had given to Abraham all the way back in Genesis chapter 12. As they are on the edge of this new territory, God tells Moses to pick one man from each of the 12 tribes of Israel and send them to spy out the new land. Moses' instructions are that these 12 men are to scout out the new land by answering a number of questions, such as, what's the condition of the land? What are the inhabitants of the land like? Are they living in walled cities, fortified cities? What's the fruit of the land like? As you can imagine, the congregation is anxiously awaiting this report. They'd spent their entire lives hearing about this land. Well, finally, after 40 days, these 12 men bring word back to Moses and the nation that the land was exactly as God described it. As proof of the fruit of this new land, they brought back a cluster of grapes that took 2 men to carry. This is the day that they had spent their entire life dreaming about when they were baking bricks all the way in Egypt. It was right here in front of them. And we have to ask this question: what could stand in their way of receiving the promises of God for them? And the answer is absolutely nothing but themselves. Let's read Numbers chapter 13, verse 25. At the end of 40 days, they returned from exploring the land. They came back to Moses and Aaron and the whole Israelite community at Kadesh in the desert of Paran, or Paran, whichever you prefer to say. There they reported to them and to the whole assembly and showed them the fruit of the land. They gave Moses this account. We went into the land that you sent us, and you're right. It does flow with milk and honey. In fact, here is the fruit. But, everyone say but. And this is a big, big but. The people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites live in the Negev. The Hittites and Jebusites and Amorites live in the hill country. And the Canaanites live near the sea and along the Jordan. Caleb steps up. Shh. Silences the people before Moses and said, well, yeah, what they're saying is right, but we should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. But, everyone say but. The men who had gone up with him said, we can't attack these people. They're stronger than we are. And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land they'd explored. They said, the land we explored devours those living in it. And all the people we saw there of great size. We even saw the Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak. Well, they come from Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes. Whose eyes? In their own eyes. And we look the same to them. I think it's important that as we start this message today to acknowledge that some of you have come out of some terrible things. You've come out of addictions, or you've come out of abuse. In other words, you've left Egypt. But that does not mean that you've entered the promised land. Just because you have made progress does not mean that you've possessed the land in the future God has for you. And this is where the Israelites stand. It is a time of transition. They have escaped their past, and now they're looking at the promised land. But this new territory is unknown. It's unfamiliar. It has new challenges. And anything unknown, anything unfamiliar, anything new often creates fear. And that creates a crisis of belief between faith in the future and fear of the unknown. Now we have to acknowledge that what these men were saying was absolutely true. There were giants in the land, and the cities were walled. They had their facts right, but they had grossly misinterpreted them. And God did not want his people living in denial. So for all those in here today who love to write things down, and you've been waiting for me to say something for you to write down, here it is. Number one, faith is not naive. You see, God had sent the spies to study the land themselves. He said, I want you to see the land, the good and the bad, the opportunities and the obstacles. There's no ignoring the facts here. We want you to acknowledge the truth. And that leads us to the second one. Faith is not avoiding reality. God wanted his people to know that they would be facing challenges up ahead. You cannot go around these challenges. You're going to have to face them head on. The third thing is faith is not passive. As we said last week, that miracles are often motion activated. That miracles start when our faith moves our feet. And they would not be able to inhabit this land living comfortably. They were going to have to do something, get their feet wet. That brings us to the fourth one. Faith is not easy. You see, God does not call his people to do easy things. He calls us to live in the realm of risk. So faith is going to cost you something. Faith is not a crutch, but it is a cross that we are called to carry. And number five is faith is not a feeling. It's actually much bigger than that. So if it's not those things, what is it? Well, faith focuses on the future, rooted in who God is. Faith gives his children a strong expectation despite our fears. Yes, we acknowledge that these things are true, but because of what God said, we believe he'll bring us safely to the other side as he promised he would. And every day, in every transition, you and I get the choice of what we will focus on with our time and our energy, and it may be the most significant choice that we make. There are some of you in here today that need to go on a fact-finding mission. You need to study all the obstacles. You need to know what you're up against and what this next season may require of you. Or maybe God wants to show you that he has been preparing you and he's been equipping you for all these adversities. He might even want you to sample some of the fruit of the land so you will know what you will enjoy on the other side of the crisis once it has been complete. But there are others of you in here today, and you need to do the exact opposite. You've gotten so focused on all the details of every problem you're facing that you've lost sight of the bigger picture. You are so overwhelmed because you have tunnel vision and you become blind to all the ways that God has provided for you and protected you in the past. So you need to not look smaller, you need to take a step back and look bigger. But for all of us, maybe you need to grab a microscope and focus on the details, or take a step back and have a telescope and see the bigger picture. You have a choice to make. And the spies, after acknowledging the good things they found in the land, they soon began to focus on the obstacles that stood in their way. And we read their report, it's riddled with fear, and the conclusion they make is clear. We are not able to go up against these people, for they are stronger than we are. In verse 32, as we read it, maybe one of the most tragic, sad, and consequential verses in the entire Old Testament. It says they spread a bad report to the people, persuading them that they could not go up and enter the promised land. And therefore, subsequently, even today, the temptation has always been to focus on the size of the problem rather than on God's power and provision, to allow fear to override our faith. Because just like the spies, we have a tendency to take all of our experiences, all of our disadvantages, all of our shortcomings, and take those and piece them together into the story that we are telling ourselves. Because for better or for worse, you are the narrator of your own story. And all too often, the story that we tell ourselves and we tell other people focuses on the size of the problem rather than the size of God's power. So fear takes opportunities and turns them into obstacles. Fear takes good news and turns it into a bad report. And this is so important. The report that you believe is more important than the report that you have received. In Numbers chapter 13, we're also introduced to a new character, a man by the name of Caleb. So after the majority of the spies share their fears, Caleb steps forward and he silences the people. He says, no, we should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. A few verses later, in fact, a chapter later, in chapter 14, we're introduced to a new character by the name of Joshua, and he joins Caleb in their descent from the majority. Let's read that, Joshua 14. Joshua and Caleb tore their clothes and said to the entire Israelite assembly, the land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. If the Lord is pleased with us, he will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and he will give it to us. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not be afraid of the people of the land, because we will devour them. Their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us, so do not be afraid of them. You see, Caleb and Joshua had the same facts as the others. The difference was their interpretation of the facts. Let me break it down this way. I feel like I've lost you guys. You guys know that every December, whether it be the entire month long or at least the week of Christmas, there's going to be a television station that for 24 consecutive hours shows the Christmas story. Yeah. All right, you're going to shoot your eye out. There's also going to be another television station that will show you Chevy Chase's National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, right? However, there's another television station that gets it right. There's another television station that is in step with the Holy Spirit. It may be called Angel Network. I don't really know, because it decides it's going to show one of the most underrated Christmas specials ever, and that is the series of Rockies. No lie. Some of y'all watching with me every single year. I think some of the most underappreciated and underrated Christmas shows of all time, because in Rocky chapter 4, which, by the way, every time we've ever had trouble with Russia, we either send Sylvester Stallone over there for Rocky and Rambo, and they take care of everything. We may be on to something there. But in Rocky chapter 4, there's like 75 chapters, so we got to call them chapters at this point. On Christmas Day, he goes over there to fight Drago in the Soviet Union. You guys remember that? Now, here's the thing. Here's the reason why I'm telling you that. Now, if you've seen it, you know the first 4 rounds, Rocky gets the snot beat out of him. But did you know, Pastor Damon, I've never got worried watching that. You want to know why? I know how the story ends. I've seen it enough time to know that in the end, Rocky's going to win. You see, Caleb knew how the story was going to end. He said, yeah, there might be some giants out there, and we may even look like grasshoppers, but God has already said that we will see it, that we will step into it, so I'm not going to be afraid of everything. I know how the story ends. This is the first celebration that claps for that. I knew y'all were saved, sanctified, set free, and living into the Spirit's guidance. Talk about Rocky, everybody go crazy. Okay, let me break down this way, because some of y'all are not convinced. Amy and I have a master bedroom, we have a master bathroom, we have a tub, and we have a shower, but that shower is not very big. You have to be committed once you go in, because there ain't gonna be no turning around in there. So we take showers separately, and we have a different interpretation of that shower. If Amy takes the shower first, and then she gets out, and I get in there, I will inevitably say to her, like, son of a gun, that shower is hot. If the roles are reversed and I get in there first and then I get out and she gets in, she'll say, how do you take such a cold shower? It's the same shower, but 2 totally different perspectives of that shower. Different interpretations. Why? It's all in how we turn the knob. Can I show you a picture? You see, in every situation that you face, you have the opportunity to turn a knob. You can turn the fear up, or you can turn your faith up. But the choice is yours. You get to adjust the knob. And the 10 people came back and they had turned that knob of fear all the way up, but yet Caleb and Joshua had come back and they had turned the faith all the way up. So you get the choice to turn up your fear or to turn up your faith. Can I be honest with you guys? Is this the honest crowd? I mean, you already admitted you like Rocky in here today, so we're all on the same page here. But, we started this building project quite a while back, but it's about, 14 months ago now when we had gotten word that our lender had fallen through and we had already started building. You guys know the story. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but you guys said I could be honest with you guys, okay? But when that time was happening, November, December, January, February, every time that I would pull into the parking lot, whether that be to worship on a Sunday or even, in my case, to work here throughout the week, man, I'd pull into the parking lot and I'd see this new building and I'd get terrified. You said I could be honest with you. A little scared. And you do know the underlying emotion for anger is usually you're scared or you're terrified of something. So I'd pull up in the parking lot, terrified, scared, which made me angry at the lending organization, at myself. You said I could be honest, even at you. Why aren't people giving? Why did this loan fall through? Why don't we have the money? Why doesn't anybody believe in me? Why would God allow this? So if I'm really being honest, there was a sense of embarrassment in the community for me. There was a little bit of being ashamed, and that leads to the feeling of frustrated. I mean, guys, we started this project in 2015, at least thinking about it and dreaming about it. What that means is we didn't rush into this. We're good stewards. And then you start having people that question publicly whether you're telling the truth or not. And they begin to question, why do we even need this new building? So to be completely honest with you guys, you said that I could be. Every time I'd pull into the parking lot, it was like a sickness would overcome me. He's showing up to worship, and in my case, showing up every day to work, and I'm feeling sick. Why? Because I'm nervous, anxious, and edgy. It's about this time where I had to make a decision. What was I going to focus on? I can't deny the facts, but I've really got a choice to make in this situation. Now, some of you, well, you've been here with us long enough to know that every year we've done our prayer and fasting. But in 2023, you guys may remember that I stood in front of the church, like next year is not going to be prayer and fasting, it's actually going to be prayer and feasting. Because we'd had 7 years of fasting, like, you know what, we need to celebrate and kind of end all of our time of prayer and fasting with the celebration of God's goodness and feasting, partaking. But then this situation happens. And the first thing that happens with fear is they're like, no, we got to go back to fasting. In fact, that's what people tell me. We can't be feasting in this season. We got to go back to fasting because that's what fear does. And then there came a moment in my life where I had to say, what am I going to focus on? Are we going to go back? Are we going to make the decision? What's foolish? What's full of faith? And I had to say, okay, here's what the deal is. I can't deny the facts because there's a massive giant in front of me. Let me show you. In some cases, there was a literal 30-foot wall that was uncompleted. I could not deny the reality of that, but I also had to stand in faith that if God said it and God started, then one day we will see it. He's always come through, and he will come through. So I'd ask myself, which knob am I going to turn? So I made the conscious decision that I'm going to start turning the praise knob because that's not natural for me. So every time I stepped foot on this campus, every time I went into that new building and I've tried to do that even today, I said I'm going to sing a song and I'm going to give God a sacrifice of praise. I will not allow the hardships of this situation to downsize the greatness of God. So I made a decision. In last February, I don't have to knock down any walls because they're not completed. But we're gonna go into this building and we're gonna praise our way through this. We're gonna sing a song until we see it. We're not gonna cower down in fear. We're gonna respond in faith. And that's what Caleb and Joshua did. They knew God would fight for them. Why? Because he always had. They saw the same thing the other people saw, but yet they saw God's hand and God's faithfulness in all of it. And the 10 people saw the present, so they forgot the past because fear was their lens, not faith, and it distorted their reality, and they started talking crazy. How do I know that? Verse 33. We saw the Nephilim there, and we seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes. Okay. There may be some truth to that. And grasshoppers are small. Can we admit that? Yes. But did you know that grasshoppers have a strength that is not proportionate to their body? They have a supernatural power all of their own. Did you know that a grasshopper can generate 20,000 tons of force per gram of their body weight, which allows them to jump 20 times their body size? Did you know that grasshoppers have a strength that is 10 times larger than the strength of a human? That if humans could jump at the same rate as grasshoppers, we would jump 5 stories high over a football field long? Same facts, grossly misinterpreting them. You guys have heard about locusts, right? Locusts are a species of grasshoppers. Grasshoppers, locusts can destroy entire fields of crops. You wanna know why? Because a single grasshopper can eat half its body weight in plants per day. What am I talking about? Yes, we may be grasshoppers, but together we can take down any giant because problems are not solved, they are outgrown. It's Alfred Adler who created this term, and if you get anything from this message, I want you to hear this. He created a psychological term called a life lie. What is a life lie? It's the story we tell ourselves. He said that if you want to change your life, you have to change your story. The life lie is a false belief that we built our lives around, and it is a form of self-sabotage. It's the excuse that we give ourselves to avoid responsibility in moving forward in faith. He says it does not honor God. In fact, this insecurity actually discredits what Jesus Christ accomplished on the cross. And the Israelites are exhibit A. Grasshopper thinking was a lie that they had told themselves because of their fear of moving forward. Let me break this down in the context of America. In the darkest period of our nation's history, the slaves were forbidden to learn how to read. The slave owners knew the key to freedom was in the mind of the enslaved. That once a person in slavery begins to think like a free man, they would be impossible to control. Because if you liberate someone's thinking, it is only a matter of time before the chains fall off. This is so powerful because our way of thinking epitomizes our freedom. How we think about situations, how we think about opportunities, how we think about obstacles determines whether or not if we will act on faith in them. The Israelites had been slaves for so long that they had forgotten that they were originally God's children, and they started seeing themselves as grasshoppers. Let me break it down like this. If you leave here today and you go to the zoo, you will see all kinds of animals living in cages. Now, the thing about that is, as long as they stay in that cage, they know exactly when and what they will eat. Cages, although they are unnatural, are consistent. Therefore, they provide security. However, there is something that is still within those animals that urges them to see what's beyond the safety of their warm bed and conveniently placed water trough. Now, for the animal that is born into captivity, he has no comparison. His needs have always been met, and he's always been safe. You would think that that would be enough, right? But if that was truly enough, then why do the cages of these doors have to be locked? Here's why. Because no matter how tame that lion is, there's something within him that is drawn to the freedom of the wild, even though he has never lived there before. The lion longs for something he's never experienced, even though his needs are being met in the cage. That, my friends, is Caleb and Joshua. They knew that they were made for 4, even though the other 10 said, hey, Egypt is behind us, and the cage was so comforting. They had been in slavery, and although it was miserable, it was still safe. And now they have the opportunity to go into their own land, which is an abundant land, but all they could think about was the comfort of the cage. So the question that I ask you today is, do you have the courage and the faith to move into your destiny after you've lived safely in the cage? Sadly, the answer to the majority is no. Because as soon as that door creaked open, they started complaining. Send us back to Egypt. And it was grasshopper thinking. Here's what the Bible says. That night, all the members of the community raised their voices and wept aloud. All the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole assembly said to them, if only we had died in Egypt or in this wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us to this land only to let us fall by the sword? Our wives, now they're bringing their women and the kids into it. Our wives and children will be taken as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to go back to Egypt? Oh, this is so good. This is so good. They were talking themselves out of the very thing that God was bringing them into. And that's what fear does. So I just wonder, what are you talking yourself out of today? Oh, I don't have what it takes. I don't have the influence. I don't have the education. I don't have the pedigree. I'm just a single mom. I'm just a divorcee. I'm just a widow. You know what? I don't have what I want, but I get by it. I'm comfortable. And Joshua and Caleb beg you, don't forfeit this land because of your fears. God is with you, and he did not bring you this far to see you fail. Amen. And now God responds, as surely as I live, and as surely as the earth is filled with the Lord's glory, not one of these people will ever enter the land. They have all seen my glorious presence and the miraculous signs I performed both in Egypt and in the wilderness. But again and again, they've tested me by refusing to listen to my voice. They will never even see the land I swore to give to their ancestors. None of those who have treated me with contempt will ever see it. You see, no matter how hard Caleb and Joshua tried, they could not talk the people into it. You want to know why? Because nobody can talk you into your destiny but you. No, Pastor. If I had somebody to affirm me, somebody to encourage me, somebody to speak life over me, then I would. Nope. Because psychologists say you rarely, if ever, believe what other people tell you, but you always believe what you tell yourself. And the story ends so sadly and shockingly. This entire generation, some million people strong, would wander in the wilderness for 40 years. And everyone over the age of 20 would not be able to enter into this promised land. They would stay stuck in a time of transition. So friends, when we are ruled by fear, there will always be consequences. Not only for you, but for your family who follows after you. Can I show you a picture, my friend? Yes. My friend. I'm from Oklahoma. All the cows are our friends, right? Did you know that a cow has this innate sense to know when a storm is coming? And when cows sense that a storm is coming, they move in the opposite direction. That was pretty good, wasn't it? That was pretty good. The problem with that is that when one cow gets afraid and runs, they all do. It's a herd mentality. But following other cows has consequences. How? Because moving in the opposite direction of the storm only prolongs the storm because, well, cows can't outrun a storm. Someone once asked this question, where is the wealthiest real estate located in the world? And the answer is not Manhattan, it's not London, it's not Paris, it's not Hollywood, it's not Dubai. The wealthiest real estate is in the graveyard. It's where untapped potential resides and God's unused gifts waste away. Bronnie Ware knows that. She wrote a book about the regrets of dying. She worked as a hospice in New Zealand, in Australia. She'd literally been surrounded by thousands of deaths a year. And she discovered that the number one regret of dying patients is lack of courage to live a life that is true to themselves. A life on a journey of faith and one not ruled by fear. You guys have already said that I could be honest with you. But for me, I too often find myself being like, where's patience? I make decisions based upon what other people think about me. I shrink back from new opportunities because I don't feel like I have the lineage or the pedigree, and because I think I'm a grasshopper, and I don't always have enough faith to move forward. But in this 45th year of my life, in this year 2025, I'm learning to come alive. I want to live like Caleb. And I read a verse of scripture just a moment ago that if you really heard it the way God intended for you to hear, you would have shouted at me when I said it, but you didn't, so I don't think you got it. But because my servant Caleb had a different spirit, everyone say different spirit, and follows me wholeheartedly, I will bring him into the land he went to, and his descendants will inherit it. Can I show you my other friend? I mean, we've got all kinds of friends in Oklahoma. You've got cows and you've got buffaloes. You do know that buffaloes too have an innate sense to know when a storm is coming, but they do the exact opposite of what cows do. Why? They have a different spirit. So instead of running away from the storm, they know they can't outrun it. They actually run towards the storm. Thus, they get through it faster and stronger. You see, if you try to run from fear, you'll be running your entire life. But the fastest way to the other side is to face it by faith, run toward it, and thus get through it faster. Caleb had a buffalo spirit, and he and Joshua were the only ones of this generation to walk freely in the promised land. An entire generation missed their destiny because of fear. I don't know what God is calling you to this year, but I do believe you're in a time of transition. And my encouragement to you as the pastor of this church is don't stay stuck here. Don't let fear cripple you. If God has said it, you will see it, so step into it. Turn the knob of faith up and the knob of fear down. Don't be a cow following a herd. It's going to cost you and your children. Be a buffalo. Be a Caleb. Have a different spirit. Face your fears and you will get through it. In other words, don't take 40 years to conquer what God is calling you to claim today. For too long in my life, I've tried to run away from things. I've told myself a lie about my life. I told myself a lie about a story. And here, year 45, in 2025, I'm coming alive. And I encourage you to do the same thing. Have a different spirit. Don't let fear rob you of your future and your family's future. If God said it, you'll see it. Step into it.
Hey, thank you for making it to this point. You listened to the entirety of the message and you get the gold star for today. Oh, I'm just teasing you. But I would like to say thank you. Thank you for investing in our church. Thank you for making what we do here possible. It's because of your generosity that souls are being saved. Thank you.